All right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Everything Virtual. I am Zain here with Ronnie. Ronnie, how's it going, man?
It's going well.
I
Yeah.
finally
How are
remembered
you?
how to I finally remembered how to do the old school introductions.
It's just muscle memory, right? You
It's just
just got to
muscle
get
memory.
back into the flow of things.
Yeah, I think for the last couple of episodes I was a little off my game, but now we're back. So we'll try to keep it with the same old, same old. But cool, man. So I'd say let's just dive straight in. We got a couple of topics here that came up over the past week, and I think there is some interesting developments happening. So the
Yeah.
first one, and I mean, if you have a preference, well,
Yeah.
no, let's just do Tilt Brush first.
Yeah.
So
Let's do it.
Google decided that they are going to nix Tilt Brush. They are no longer going to continue development and support, but they've made it open source. And I haven't had a chance to look into all the things that have happened since they made it open source, but it sounds like there's some really cool stuff happening already.
Yeah. No, that's what I mean. That was the big story. Is they just kind of, kind of made the dual announcement. So supposedly people were pushing to get it open source even before that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of bittersweet to, on one hand, hear that they were discontinuing their development of the product, but then
Mm-hmm.
at the same time also releasing it open source to let people kind of get their hands dirty with it and really get a chance to come up with some creative uses for the application. I mean, Tilt Brush is a staple in VR at this point. I mean, there's definitely folks out there that have kind of used Tilt Brush as like a special type of art platform.
Yeah. I mean,
Really
those
came
things
up with
are
some
really
creative.
cool. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. So we've already seen now from this from Tilt Brush going open source a project called Multibrush come out, which is a
Mhm.
free multiplayer version of Tilt Brush that you can get on the Quest. My understanding is it's a side quest feature, which I mean we'll get into some of that stuff in our
Sure.
next topic. But yeah, there's I saw a version of Tilt Brush. Someone ported it over to Magic Leap, so they were using their hands to draw in the air,
Mhm.
and it was in their environment. So they like drew a stick figure that was sitting in a chair and like all kinds of like fun stuff like
Cool.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's cool. Like Tilt Brush has always been one of those like kind of neat project type games that you like in watching mixed reality videos and stuff. It's just like gives people that haven't gotten a chance to try VR kind of a special glimpse
Mhm.
into some of the possibilities that the medium provides.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's sad to see it go. As far as Google support, I think one of the main questions on that front was kind of like Google obviously is showing that they're kind of completely exiting the VR space for the most part. Like
That's what I
they
was going to bring up. Is like,
because
okay, this,
they yeah
yeah, go
because
ahead.
they had other products too, like they when they had Google Daydream
Mhm.
headsets and all of that stuff, they already phased that out. Now they're phasing out Tilt Brush. Obviously there's still like Google Earth, I think, which is still supported, and
Mhm.
they also own Alchemy Labs, which after this announcement they kind of doubled down and said no, like we're totally supported by the company. They're working on some new project that we don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But they said
Okay.
that they all kind of have their heads down on that project. So I mean, you never know with a company like Google. I mean, they also
Yeah.
recently kind of completely nixed their internal game studio development for Stadia,
Mhm.
which is like Stadia still is going to be continue is going to still continue, but like that's kind of a big deal that they hired on like
Yeah.
hundreds of people, and now they're kind of, I mean, Google's such a big company, apparently most of those people are getting like reshuffled into different positions,
Mhm.
but it's still just like, yeah, you have to wonder what Google is thinking in terms of like what their analysis is of VR and what they think their role is going to be. Like obviously Facebook, Apple, which we talked about, before, is potentially entering the space. So like you would think Google would have a vested interest in kind of keeping a foothold there. Maybe just Tilt Brush isn't that foothold, and maybe they have
Yeah.
some other ideas, but I don't know. It's interesting.
It is, and there's a certain nostalgic element because of the fact that the Tilt Brush was one of those, like, I don't know if it was a launch title, but
Yeah, it
At,
came
le-
out like with
at least for me, it was. I don't know if it
on
was an
the.
original.
I mean, it came out when it was out when I got my Vive, and
Okay,
it, like
so
so
yeah,
day one Vive,
day
it was
one vibe.
out.
Yeah.
I
So
don't know if it was available before that, like for
as
any of the
okay.
dev kit. Like I never had used Tilt Brush like
Hmm.
on a previous dev kit, because
Before.
the thing is, like, you have to have 6 degrees of freedom in order to enjoy it. Like
Yeah.
you have to have the motion controller. So really, before the Oculus Rift and the Vive came to market, there really weren't any like all in one like setups like that. Really.
Yeah. Gotcha. No, no.
So,
I mean, it's been here since the beginning. So there's an element of like, okay, the fact that they made it open source is awesome, right? Because now people can really dive in, and there's a lot of really cool things happening. The flip side, which you brought up, and that's the other half of it that I was going to get into, is what does this mean for Google in VR? And they have already been kind of nixing or exiting out of their previous projects. But like your point, this to me is too big of a space to not have a
have
major
something.
tech company have a piece of the
Yeah.
pie, right? So
Especially considering others are still putting money into it, and
yeah,
still like even if like they're internally they've decided at this point like they don't think it's going to be big, or like who knows what they think, right?
hmm,
They still, just for risk management, to make sure they have something there in case they need it. I'm sure they still are going to be working on all this stuff. So
yeah. And to play devil's advocate, I'm looking at this, and I don't remember how much Tilt Brush ended up being, but I remember at some point it was like $30, right?
yeah,
Like
I think so.
early on in the beginning, and so it's now a 5-year-old title. So I think from a prudent financial standpoint, there's some of this that kind of makes sense, right? Where it's just like they're not going to continue development on a 5-year-old project when you can see VR is accelerating at a very high rate. So I can understand it from that standpoint. It's more so just the idea of like the abandonment of projects, right? And
Yeah,
it's more so hopefully the fact that they're working on something new, and
yeah.
it sounds like that's the case, that nobody can really talk about it, but they are working on certain things. One thing I did want to follow up on with you, because I have not been following the space, but Stadia was there was so much hype when it came out, and I know that it didn't deliver the way people were hoping it would. What happened with that? Can you give me
I
like
mean,
the 2 minute
the bottom
recap?
line with Stadia, I think, is just they never nailed down the business model part
Hmm.
of it. Like I mean, from day one, they made a really strong um, marketing push,
Hmm.
just in terms of like the technology sounded amazing, and there was a lot of potential there. But I think because they didn't have the right pricing model, people just weren't interested. And I think that's what I mean. It's still like there's people out there that have used it and speak highly of it, like that it works well if you have good internet, that sort of thing. But the bottom line is, I think when they presented it, it kind of looked like it could potentially be like a Netflix of games, where you
Yeah.
could just have access to games and just, on any device, click any kind of link, instantly pull up the game, be in a specific area. Like, a lot of the stuff they talked about was just mind blowing. Instead, you have to buy all of the games. They're all full price, but you don't own
Mm,
anything.
okay.
You can only stream it off of their servers. So, like, it just didn't have enough of they didn't give you enough of a reason up front to pay for this. Like, none of those features really work the way that
The way,
they could have,
yeah.
if
Okay.
like if you could just pay like a monthly subscription and have access to all the games, and then all of a sudden everybody that's interacting online has access to all the games too, and all that kind of stuff. I could
Yeah.
see how it would have been a really cool ecosystem to be a part
Yeah.
of. But as it stood, it was more geared towards people that didn't have computers or consoles, that wanted to be able to stream but also had really fast internet. Like, it was kind of like an odd, like, it requires really fast internet, but you know, you also have to buy all the games full price.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's inferior to most people that would have a console or a good PC.
Why
It's
would
going
you
to be a
do
worse
this? Yeah.
experience to that. So like it's just
Interesting. Okay.
yeah. I just think they botched the business model, and everybody was like the first initial reveal at GDC. It looked really really cool, but everybody wondered, well, but how are you going to buy games? And
Yeah.
so that was kind of
Everybody
like
liked the
that.
idea of it before seeing the full details.
Yeah, but then when
Wow.
they gave those details, it's like, oh, well, that doesn't sound great. And then it released, and yeah, it just kind of
Well,
they never changed it. And
yeah.
now, I mean, for all we know, maybe they are. Maybe so along that same line, they positioned it as this like future facing platform that was going to do all these amazing things that normal traditional consoles just can't do because they're all in the cloud now. And they were also going to be double downing on creating an internal game studio that was comprised of the late like some of the brightest minds from other places that they kind of
Mhm.
pulled together to make Stadia games. And we never got to see what those folks were working on because before they released any of their own titles, as far as I know, they closed down the studio. So their
Interesting.
official position is Stadia is going to continue,
Yeah.
and it's just now they're from operating for the last couple of years, they're now realizing that they need to just focus more on third party content, that sort of thing. So I
Interesting.
mean, maybe this is a way of pivoting to being kind of a platform that could provide some of those, I don't know, provide
Yeah.
access. Like I still think ultimately Stadia could be really cool if it was some kind of a monthly subscription
Hmm.
and you could just play games anywhere. Like, I mean, if that were the case, I would buy into it. But
Yeah.
I'm not gonna buy a $60 game just so I can play that game when I'm on the go.
Yeah.
That's like
I get it.
on a streaming device. Like I know some people do that with like, with other consoles and stuff, but come on.
Yeah. It's funny because I'm like comparing it now to Apple's Apple Arcade, and I feel like that what they were going for is what Apple did, but on a much smaller scale, right? Like it's $5 a month. Your whole family gets it for $5 a month, and you can play it on any device. And
Yeah.
they got in-house developers to create games that were just, and these aren't like AAA games, but
No.
but it,
But
but it,
you also install those on your device too. So they're not like it's not like you're streaming the games on your
oh
iPhone.
yeah, so true,
No,
true. Oh, okay.
so my point is like in some ways they took the best side. Like, I mean, I still think there's something that Stadia could provide the world, right?
Hmm.
Like, there's something about if you're able to stream games, there's some advantages to being able to do that
Yeah,
at a high quality level. Like, but it's just no one could take advantage of any of those supposed benefits if the system doesn't create them, and if it's not something that
yeah.
everybody's a part of. Like, imagine if they had created YouTube, or like imagine if YouTube had launched, and YouTube, you had to pay for content from day one,
Hmm.
and you could only like, so when people share things, like you could only check it out if you were a
If you
paid
had a
subscriber.
subscription too,
Like,
yeah.
no one would have, like, I mean, how many years did it take them to finally release something like YouTube Red /
Yeah.
Premium? To like they really had to get people used to the idea of this has value
Hmm.
before people were willing to pay even like a subscription service to that kind of stuff, right? Like,
Hmm.
same thing with Apple. They've had people, you've been buying all kinds of free games and stuff on your iPhone for a long time before they decided, hey, let's find a way to, like, now people are used to playing games on their phones.
Hmm.
Now we'll come up with this service. Like, I feel like Google kind of jumped the gun, and maybe there just was no way to do it other than that.
Yeah.
But
No, I get what you're saying.
I never, like, when I first was pitched the idea, I
Hmm.
thought it sounded amazing. And
No, I remember we were at
yeah,
GDC, and you're like, "This is gonna change gaming,"
yeah.
and it's
But
like
then
2 years
but
later,
but
I'm just like, "What happened to it?"
yeah, no, nothing. And it's just because of the pricing model. Like, I
Yeah.
still think if like tomorrow they changed it was a completely. I mean, at this point though, they have also lost momentum, so they kind of.
Yeah, and I mean, I just look at it compared to other studios or publishers. Like, I mean, Epic Games, right? Where like they're giving games away for free, or like some of their top games are available for free, and like their
Yeah.
whole thing is like in-app purchases. So you
See, and
reach this
that's what
player
they
base,
should have,
like,
like, imagine they did
yeah,
that kind of stuff with this service. Like,
yep.
and there is a use case for people not having the hardware to play good games, being able to play good games. Like,
Yeah. Okay,
but
let's
anyways,
let's
that was
switch
a
back.
long diversion.
I
Yeah.
was gonna say, I mean, because I mean I could actually talk about this even more, but I feel like we should try to flip it back to VR related content.
Man, what is with Google and their execution on these?
Okay, so fine. If we're gonna go a little bit further down the road, the one thing that came to mind was the fact that, like, Google has definitely hit some home runs, but they have had some duds along the way too, right? And so I guess I shouldn't be as surprised with Stadia, because you look at what was it, Google Circle or Google something?
It's
That they
weird because they like kind of double down on things quite a bit, but then they are also willing to just like I
but then
don't know.
they also
It's
just like
like they
abandon
didn't
things
do
super
enough due
early.
diligence to like they have an idea and it's half baked, but then they just put full resources towards a half baked idea, and then like before
I
they
don't know.
even like I don't. It's just strange
I mean,
because
Google did great with YouTube. Gmail is phenomenal, right? Like they have all these like temple and Android, right? The fact that what was the name of the social network that they were putting out there to try and
oh,
compete with
Google
Facebook?
Plus,
Was it Google Plus? Yeah,
I think so
Google Plus. I just feel like there have been like definitely some strikeouts, right, to go along with their home runs. So
for sure.
and look, like
Google Glass,
Google Glass, yeah. So
like
like they,
I mean, it's kind of like they've already like I don't know if they were just too early to the table or what, but like it's kind of funny that we're talking about Apple and Facebook and like Google's kind of already been there, done that,
yeah.
like failed and moved on. But like like I don't really without even ever making a real statement about it. Like no one was
Yeah,
that
yeah.
interested to begin with, and
Maybe they're just too early to the party, or I think it comes down to what you said. Execution, I think, is a big part of it, and
yeah,
if they're not executing in a way that makes sense, no, nor do they have like, I don't see Android users galvanize the same way that I see Apple users, right? And I'm obviously biased because like most of my stuff is Apple, but
yeah.
it's like people who have like a Samsung. Like, I get it. I get it when people look at Apple and they're just like, oh, that it's a cult. Like people who have like Apple product, like it's a cult. But that also says something about like the relationship that people have with the product, right? Whereas I look at Samsung phones or Android phones in general, and it's perfectly serviceable, but there's not this like emotional. I was about to say emotional attachment, but there isn't this like emotional or like visceral element of like really wanting to support the company and it being a part of the ecosystem. So I don't know what it is. I mean, like I said, I'm not trying to like take shots at Google, because obviously they're a several $100 billion company, and they have definitely done quite a few things right. It
I
just
use Gmail and all kinds of
yeah,
different like online apps through Google like
oh
on a
yeah,
constant
search
basis. So,
engine, right? I mean, like Google it is a thing.
yeah.
So okay, hold on. We don't need to defend the fact that we're not taking shots at Google. To me, it was more so just it was interesting because we were talking about the context of gaming and then Tilt Brush and Google kind of like nixing projects. So that Stadia just popped into my mind for some reason. But
Yeah, I would just be really fascinated to know, like, yeah, I mean, it's an amazing company with a lot of brilliant people working for it. So I'm curious as to kind of how the company sees these types of like obviously it's kind of like a joke slash meme at this point. Like Google like abandons projects,
yeah,
like not a thing, right? I just wonder what the grand scheme like what allows them to do that so free flowingly and like what are their goals, like maybe they just have different goals from these projects that we don't really know about. I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, and again, this is all pure speculation, but the two things that come to mind is one, they have the money to do it and to just throw things out there that are half baked and not fully thought out. But if it hits, then they double down on it.
yeah,
Or the other aspect is like, are they at a place where they're being spread too thin, right? Like
yeah,
they're across so many different platforms, industries, and services. So maybe it's just a matter of resources where it's just like, hey, we want to try everything, right? But we also don't necessarily have the resources. So let's take the throw everything at the wall approach and see what sticks, and then whatever does, we can double down on.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, look,
we're speculating
until we get the CEO of Alphabet to jump on the show and talk about their strategy. We can only speculate.
They're gonna defend themselves. They're gonna watch this episode and they're gonna be like, man, like somebody has to go on this show and get the message straight.
I mean, hey, that would be phenomenal. You are welcome anytime on the show. Please let us know what your plans are, both within VR and outside of VR. We would be very happy to share your side of the story when it comes to this Tilt Brush and Stadia fiasco. No, not a fiasco. But yeah, so okay, let's take it back to VR, and we'll talk about one of the big players in VR that seems to be doing a lot of the right things. Now, I'm gonna have you kind of take the lead on this, but Oculus announced App Lab, and I feel like you've had a chance to dive into this a little bit more than I have. But
sure,
the basic understanding that I have is we're going to be able to directly link with other platforms like SideQuest.
Yeah, so cool. I mean, essentially, it's kind of strange because, so a while back, Oculus made the announcement that they were going to come up with some type of a side store or something where developers could release titles for the Quest that otherwise weren't approved to be sold in the normal Oculus regular app store.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, going way back, there was always this issue with the Quest and how the store was being curated when Oculus first released the Quest, because kind of historically speaking, VR is supported by indie development, and a lot of the most innovative titles came from the indie community. And so early VR was kind of, developed and fostered that way. Just, people just working on their own projects and releasing stuff onto stores and finding, a following that way. So when the Quest came out, Oculus, made it very clear that they were going to be curating the store because the Oculus Quest was going to be more of a mass market friendly product. And so they didn't want to have less polished titles on the store. They didn't want anything. They wanted to maintain quality level, so to speak. And so as a result of that, they were kind of, in some people's opinions, kind of arbitrarily deciding what kind of games, it's almost like they had their own internal plan and their own internal way of determining what types of games they wanted in their store and what types of games weren't. And some of it had to do with also just how the game was presented to Facebook. So some developers had to figure out, how to kind of PowerPoint pitch their projects in order to get it approved. Whereas other developers were like, no, I shouldn't have to do this. My game is, super popular, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So there was a lot, of kind of drama behind how Oculus was taking the store. So as a result of that, there was the development of kind of a side loading project called SideQuest, which basically allowed users to, by connecting their Quest to a PC and switching the Quest into developer mode, they were then able to install software that wasn't approved by Oculus onto the device to be used. So that was, for a while there, that was the only way that you could get any kind of games or software that weren't from the Oculus store onto the Quest. You would have to do this side loading process, and SideQuest became the main way to do that. So SideQuest kind of became its own thing. Well, I forget exactly when this was, but it might have been several months ago. Oculus did come out and say they had a plan to release kind of a side store, a method in which people could bring their titles to the Quest without having to sideload. So they were going to make some kind of a developer store or something like that. And it wasn't exactly clear how they were going to do it. Well, now what they released, this past week in February is what is their first kind of crack at that, which is called the App Lab. And essentially what it sounds like, it's kind of a weird, like on one hand, it isn't quite as like obvious as I thought it was going to be. Like I thought they could just kind of like with what Xbox did a while back, where they had a developer store on and just anyone could go like on their device to a special store, and it was, you knew when you were going into that store that the games in that store were kind of rougher and more independent, and but it was still curated just like a normal store. It was just a separate tab, right? Well, apparently, Oculus and Facebook, they don't want to take that approach. So instead, they're kind of doing, it's kind of like half-half. Like they're making this thing called App Lab, which is just a way of officially running games that aren't from the Oculus store on your device. But they're not having any kind of a mass list or anything like that where the games can be viewed. But it sounds like they're stored on Oculus servers, from what I understand.
Interesting. Okay.
So literally, as a developer, it sounds like you can basically apply to have your app added to App Lab, and I would assume that that's an easy process because the whole point of this is so that it's not curated and locked off like the normal Oculus store is. So I assume you sign up for an account as a developer, you basically get to like as long as it passes certain like limited criteria, I would imagine it gets uploaded to the store kind of automatically. But there's no way to view the content on the Quest. Like you can't go onto the Quest or into the Oculus store and just see a list of games. Oculus is not going to keep like a centralized list that's public facing or anything like that. What you do, yeah.
So it's not like early access on Steam. It's a different. Okay.
No. So like whereas early access on Steam is like you access all those games
and you can charge for it as well.
Yeah. So on this apparently you can charge for it, but it's just like basically what this does is it makes it so for your average user, they don't have to switch the device over to developer mode and kind of jump through these weird hoops of connecting their device to a PC in order to install the applications. Basically, it gets rid of all that tricky part for normal folks out there that don't know how side loading works. But they're also not going to like put the content out in front of just your average Quest user. So the developer of the content can either find their own way of getting people access to their game through like links on videos or whatnot. Like basically, developers will be able to give out links to their content, and when you click on that, it sounds like then it'll like let you log in or something and basically download the game then to your device. And so I haven't tried it yet, so I don't know exactly how it works. But so you can either, but I do understand that developers and individuals will be able to provide links to App Lab content that then normal users like I wouldn't have to, like, for example, like the main benefit here is if I wanted to, like, let's say my cousin has an Oculus Quest 2. If I wanted to let them try a game that wasn't in the Oculus store before, I would have to explain to them that they need to sign up for a developer account and switch their Quest over to developer mode and get a PC that'll connect to their device and install SideQuest and download the game through SideQuest and upload it onto the device. Now, if you wanted to run code that's not included in the Oculus store, you could simply send them a link, and the link will just let them just install the game from App Lab. But they won't be able to find the game on their own outside of like having some link or something on the internet point them in that direction. Or what the kind of when I said 50-50, they're partnering with SideQuest apparently they worked with SideQuest on this. And so I wonder if part of this was also their response. Like a lot of people have been critical of Oculus. Oculus has the reputation of kind of, working with developers that have successful products like this, and then slowly but surely integrating some of those features into their platform, and then kind of cutting the cord, so to speak. And so there was a lot. I mean, around the time of them talking about some of this stuff. I mean, I feel like the side quest people always seemed fairly positive about this development, but there was like VR desktop and Big Screen, the developer behind Big Screen. Those folks like are always worried about Oculus kind of eventually one day cutting them off from their kind of
their own official.
Yeah, like basically that behind the scenes, like Oculus wants to be in control of movie watching on their platform, not have Big Screen be in charge of that stuff.
Yeah.
So like there's kind of this like on one hand you need to work with them, but on the other hand there's this kind of like scary kind of weird. So to me it sounds pretty awesome that Oculus was able to find a way to make it easier to play content that used to have to be sideloaded, but also still continue to have a strong role for SideQuest. So SideQuest, it sounds like, is going to curate the content. So like I told you, these indie developers can give out links to their software and people can find their App Lab games that way. Or you can go to the SideQuest website. You can install SideQuest, but you can also just go to the website. And the website will basically curate all of the list of all the titles that are going to that basically are in App Lab, but then also that the developers chose to be added to SideQuest. So it's almost like SideQuest is partnering with Oculus. So it sounds like it kind of sounds like, and I could be wrong on this. So someone listening, if they know otherwise, let me know. It sounds like when developers are adding their games to App Lab, they're going to get some kind of a question of like, would you like this content to be added to SideQuest? And then it'll be then added to a list. You probably then make a SideQuest kind of, storefront, and you can even sell your game through SideQuest. And that's just kind of like almost like they're doing the curating part off of the Oculus store, but then Oculus is just allowing that data to kind of come through them more easily to where it's not. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're talking about the benefit, what the potential benefits would be, right, for Oculus, and that's a big part of it that I was going to bring up is the data, right? What is the benefit for them? What are they getting out of it?
Yeah. Now all of a sudden, you're right. You're totally right.
That's and so
now they get all of SideQuest's data, huh?
Well, yeah. So I feel like they'll be able to take that and not look. I'm not gonna not in a nefarious way, but in a business positive way where it's just like, okay, well, we by creating this platform or this link for people to use such and such, like we can gather more data about who's playing what or what's popular or where should we be focusing our resources. I mean, like at the end of the day, like they're not the only company doing this, right? Like data is like the digital oil or digital gold, however people want to talk about it. It's like that's where the value lies, and especially for them as in terms of business intelligence and business analysis. I think that's where my head first went to, where it's like, okay, what's the benefit for them?
That makes sense. That totally makes sense. No, and the kind of funny thing is like John Carmack, who like we've talked about him in the past. He's a pivotal figure, in the gaming world and also, at Oculus, even though he's kind of moved on from Oculus, at least to some degree. But he still, has his involvement. And he had said something basically recently, like, if a game is successful in the App Lab, it doesn't guarantee that they're going to be brought over to the Oculus store. But he would kind of like internally mock anyone that would kind of ignore what the data suggests should be done about a title. So it is to say, like, just because you do well in the App Lab doesn't mean you're going to be brought into the store. But it sounds like Oculus is also going to use this as kind of an incubation, type program too.
If they have the resources for it, it's like it's like outsourcing the idea generation and information on like what can and potentially will be successful on the platform. And the thing is, there these indie developers who are putting their stuff on there, in a sense, are doing all the marketing for them, because if they can build up a player base or a user base for this on their own,
Yep.
and it's and look, at the end of the day, it's not only this. Like, speaking about it out loud reminds me of what modern day record labels do, where it's just like, everybody, all of these like unsigned artists, the only time that a record label will approach you is when you don't need them anymore, right? Because you've done all the work to like build your business up. So you're gonna have all these developers who like build their platform out, or build their title out, and get a base around it. And that's not to say that it's not. I don't want to look at it as like a purely negative. Of course, people have had bad experiences, but it's just like there's an element to this of like, okay, you're gonna have these indie developers bootstrapping their way through, and if they do strike gold, then Oculus is going to come with a boatload of picks and shovels, right? So like that's the idea for it. And if it's working for people, and if it can bring more, and Oculus has the resources to do that, then that's great. But I can totally understand some of the hesitations and reservations that people have when it comes to this, right? Because at the end of the day, if what is it? If the product is free to you, you're the product, right? Or something like that. Right? So it's like, so who knows how this will shake out. But I think that there's going to be quite a few wrinkles that will come from this in time, and we'll see. But as a start, I think it's fascinating, and I think that there's a lot of really interesting things that can come from this. And to me, it's just Oculus also kind of diversifying its bets by placing a small amount in terms of resources into just having people or developers place their platforms in an official way with Oculus, right?
Yeah, and it's all still so new. So I mean, I think I got most of those details right, but I also just recently learned about it. So I need to try it out for myself. I need to kind of go to the SideQuest website, see how easy it is to get going, see what it's like to bring a game over without actually doing a side load. Like I said, I assume for your average consumer, that's going to mean triggering a download on your headset that you don't have to connect any kind of cable for or anything like that. So like it sounds like it's supposed to make all that stuff so easy. But maybe we'll report back in a future episode once we actually get a chance to try it out.
We'll be following it. But yeah, if you once we have some experience with it too, it might be worth checking back.
No, that's what I'm after reading about this, I need to go and check it out for myself.
Cool, Matt. Well, is there anything else that you had in terms of Oculus or SideQuest or App Lab?
No, not really. It's
what
big
a
development
conversation. Go ahead.
This is like we're not going to make this like a major conversation piece, but because it's timely, it supposedly there was a recent update to the Quest that adds Facebook Messenger to the Quest.
Interesting. They are really going hard at integrating Oculus and Facebook.
So Messenger is now in the Quest.
In what way can you have a VR conversation with someone through Messenger? Because that might be cool.
I'm the wrong person to ask because I don't have a Facebook account.
So you're grandfathered in with just a Quest account, right?
Yeah. I mean, at some point, I guess it'll be my wife's Quest, and I can tie it to her account because I don't want a Facebook account, but at least that's my position right now.
Can't you just create one and keep everything on private?
Yeah, probably. I guess you're right. Maybe I'll do that.
You know what? My brother left, or I mean, like not closed, but like just deactivated his Facebook account several years ago, and then
I did the same thing.
And I totally understand. And he said his life was better for it, but then the rest of our family from around the world started getting onto Facebook and created like a family group and this chat. So he essentially came in. He's like, I had to go through and delete every single photo. I had to remove every single friend and just have it so that I could have, be still connected to family in that way. So I wanted to bring that. Oh, for you, like if you wanted to create, I mean, you could create just a brand new profile if you wanted to.
That's probably. I mean, I deleted mine, so I mean,
unless you want it to be your wife's Quest, but then all You'll be in a game and it'll be like her messages coming through.
We'll
So
see.
cool, man. All right. Well, we'll keep tracking this stuff for you guys. If you have any thoughts on this that you want to share, please make sure to leave them in the comments below or hit us up on Twitter if you are listening to the audio version of this podcast. But Ronnie, you have an awesome week. For everybody listening, have an awesome rest of your week or whenever you end up listening to this. And we'll be back soon. Take care.